Welcome to All Steelers Talk, your home for everything Pittsburgh Steelers, presented by allsteelers.com.
What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Strackbine, joined every Friday by my main man, Derek Bell. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talk and subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. Today, we are still less than a week removed from the 2023 NFL Draft, and the Pittsburgh Steelers have made plenty of moves that have left plenty of potential, but also plenty of questions. We're going to dive into all that. It's been a very gloomy week here in the Burgh, but yesterday, very sunny. I think that's because they knew that I splurged and bought some new golf clubs. So Mother Nature was just like, hey, buddy, here's a little bit of sunshine. You, on the other hand, have been tweeting that you've been sitting on your couch. So hopefully you're feeling a little bit better. But how you feeling, my friend?
Yeah, it's been a tough last couple of days for the kid, but I'm feeling a little bit better, man. I'm on the road back to recovery, so I'm excited about that. My couch has been my destination after I didn't leave the basement for 4 days at the NFL Draft, covering that. But over the past couple of days, been sick, on the couch. Good news is I've been able to watch some film, so I've been doing that to keep my brain, locked in, but. Yeah, I'm hopeful that, by the weekend, I'm going to be all right. We'll see.
That's hilarious that, like, you talk to a normal person. Like, if you talk to my mom, she'll call me every time she's sick or every time she's down or whatever. And she'll be like, oh, yeah, I started this new Netflix show. I'm 3 seasons deep now. He called Derek. He's like, yeah, man, I'm watching this tight end out of Mississippi State. And, he's all right. He's not terrible, but we're only on game 6. So we're getting there.
Well, I will say, like, I've been watching some cartoons with my daughter, so that's I've been alternating back and forth. When she's up, I'm in cartoon land. When she's down or busy, I'm back in the film world. So either way,
I don't know what, like, cartoons. Obviously, I'm pretty sure cartoons have changed since we were younger, but I don't know if you've gone to the family and children's section of Netflix. I discovered it like 5 days ago. Fairly Odd Parents, Scooby. I haven't left it. That's all I just do. I was watching. I'm starting Pokemon tonight. That's going to be my weekend. Just
Nice.
Finished Fairly Odd Parents. We went Scooby Doo before that. It's the greatest. Like, I didn't realize that was a thing. You could just sit there and watch all the greatest cartoons of all time. I'm sorry. What is your daughter? What are the cartoons today? You watch that, like, Paw Patrol? That was the one my nephew was into.
So she has certain cartoons that she likes. Bluey, things like that.
I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, but see, I'm the cool parent, man, because I'm showing her all, like, the cartoons that I watched as a kid. We're big on the Scooby Doo. I introduced her to Power Rangers the other day. She's been messing with that, so it's been fun, man. For sure.
Power Rangers, this a goat, hands down. All right, the best weekend of the NFL season, the whole year in general has come and gone. It's been a long time of preparation, and the reaction has been, well, pretty positive across the board. This is the first time me and you've gotten to talk about it in front of a camera.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts? Were you sitting there hyped? Were you a little nervous when they made the trade to 14? Were you a little skeptical? What are you thinking?
Yeah, man. I think the universal love for the Steelers post draft is a little bit different. We're not really used to that, but I'm an honest person. You know how I am, man. I don't say stuff just for interaction or positive clicks or anything.
True.
But man, my reaction to the draft was awesome. Like, I thought that they did extremely well. This was probably my favorite draft class that they've had in a very long time, maybe ever. I mean, definitely. As long as, like, I've been, like, covering the Steelers or covering the draft and like this spectrum. So, I mean, when they traded up for 14, I pretty much knew who it was for, for Broderick Jones. We talked about them, wanting to be aggressive, get that tackle in a relatively shallow tackle class. But even, like, just the way the board kept falling for him, man, like, all day 2, the board just fell for them perfectly. And it was awesome.
Yeah, it was. The way that nobody saw the draft working out the way that it did. I think across the board, you look for all NFL teams, and most of the reactions are positive because even the Detroit Lions drafted Jack Campbell and Jamar Gibbs in the first round, and my dad called me on day 3 as I was leaving the facility, and he's like, "The Detroit Lions, man, they had a pretty good draft, huh?" And I'm like, I guess, yeah. Like, everybody just said, everybody did.
That's what I love about the draft, man. Really, just from a fan perspective, like, everyone can go into the draft and, get something positive out of it. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Like the draft's the weekend where like all 32 fan bases really feel like they have a chance to get better. And I just like that because I think it creates like, a positive culture around the sport. It's always bittersweet for me, when the draft weekend in, just because, it's one of those things where you spend, 12 months, watching prospects or, getting ready for that weekend. And then when it comes and goes, it's like, man, this is kind of a bummer. But
Yeah.
I was really happy with the way the Steelers, class shaped up. I thought they got great value across the board. I thought they addressed a bunch of needs. And then, we're already on to 2024. So I'm excited about that as
Dude,
well.
yeah, 2024, I saw that they I don't know, I saw somewhere that I just seeing all the mocks they're picking in the top 10, and I'm like, all right, these are no longer realistic because last year that was a great spot for them. This year it's a little deeper in the lineup. But with
Right.
2023 come and gone, there are questions. Some concerning, some I think very positive, even if they are necessarily eliminating people from this roster, which you never like to see. The big one, and I think that this is where I want to start, is the cornerback room. Yeah, Joey Porter Jr., but then you come back and you add Corey Trice Jr., a guy who, I mean, Nick Martin described this guy as his film as has me levitating. That was the first thing I saw on Twitter of this guy. And I was like, I don't even know what that means, but it's got to be good. Like levitating's got to be the pinnacle of film review status. So you add Corey Trice, you add Joey Porter Jr. Do you see? I mean, obviously Joey Porter Jr. is going to play a role. Do you see Corey Trice playing a role this season? Where do you see him fitting? Because I see a lot of people saying, oh, he could play the inside. I see some people saying he could play safety. He's 6'3", 210 pounds. I mean, in my opinion, you just put him anywhere. This guy should be able to cover anybody. But where do you see his role going?
Yeah, man. I mean, for the most part, Trice has played on the boundary in college for Purdue. He hasn't played a ton in the slot, but he's a guy that I think, I think people are getting the safety thing because he played a little bit there in high school, and he has that safety build. 6'3", 205, 206 pounds. I mean,
Yeah.
when you watch this dude like just walk onto the field, he looks like a safety. There's not very many corners that are built like that. And then when you kind of compound that with the 4.47 speed, the really good agility numbers that he ran at his pro day, just the type of athlete that he is, that's what was so random to me is like, man, the medicals have to be really bad because these type of athletes with this good of film, they just don't typically go on day 3 of the draft. I mean, the cornerback position, NFL teams are always looking for these type of athletes, these long guys who can get up and press coverage, reroute receivers, be physical, and Trice does that extremely well. So being a 7th round pick, I'm trying not to get ahead of myself, but I had Trice in my top 100. Nick was higher on him than I was, but I think he was like 93rd on my top 100 list. So to get him at the end of the 7th round was just
That's
incredible
crazy.
value. And then when I watched this dude play, man, like I watched him match up with Rashad Bateman back in 2019, really had a lot of impressive reps against him, former 1st round draft pick. And then like last year, watched several of his games as well and was just incredibly impressed. Only allowed 1 touchdown in 2022. And that was really the case. That was really due to a miscommunication, in my opinion, not just like him just getting beat. So I think he's, a good athlete. He's got good film, very traitsy, very toolsy, perfect guy that, you give to Grady Brown and say like, hey, look, let's see what we can potentially make this guy into. And, if he does hit, and you talk about the possibility of maybe him and Joey Porter Jr. on the outside for years to come, like 2 just gargantuan cornerbacks who
Giant.
can play in press coverage. If that doesn't get you excited, I mean, I don't know. I guess you don't really have a pulse, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's like as good as it gets in any team, but especially in Pittsburgh. Like you talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers, great cornerbacks of the Mel Blount. I guess Rod Woodson would have been a corner, but the Donnie Shells, the Ike Taylors, these guys were not. They were not the oh man, we're gonna come up with 40 interception corners. We're 6'2" and we'll punch you square in the face type of corners, which you gotta love in Pittsburgh. So yeah, that is exciting. Do you see him as a guy who has an opportunity this season? I think that's the biggest question because you have James Pierre, you have Akello Witherspoon, you have Arthur Millette. I think people just want to know, like, what's the cornerback room going to look like when this all shakes out?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's tough because, it depends on like really Patrick Peterson's role.
Yeah.
He's alluded to maybe being moved around a little bit. I think that Peterson might make a late career transition to safety. They might play him a little bit inside, give him some opportunities to not be as static as he's been, over the
Yeah.
course of his career. But you've still got Levi Wallace. He's a starter last year. I think he's definitely going to have a chance to start again. Joey Porter Jr. being the 32nd pick in the draft. Draft capital does matter. Like NFL teams typically give those guys more opportunities. With Trice being a 7th round pick, he's not going to have anything handed to him, even if I think, he's certainly a starting capable type of talent down the road. So even if he doesn't play as a rookie, we talked about leading up to the draft, just the Steelers not having that developmental piece really for the future. And Trice, with his skill set and a guy to even mold for, even if it's not next year, if it's the year after, you got Levi Wallace, who's going to be a free agent. Patrick Peterson's career is really winding down. James Pierre on a 1-year deal. So there's going to be playing time available, even if it's in year 2. But, to get on the field early, he's going to have to, have a good training camp, obviously have a good preseason, but also he's going to need to contribute on special teams, because that's what's really going to probably set a guy like him apart from, a James Pierre who's, got a lot of special teams experience. So he's going to need to do that, to get a helmet. But I'm optimistic about Trice, man. I thought the film was really good. He's a good athlete. There's upside there for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I'm excited to, just like you said, have that building block that the Steelers did not have. I think that's what they wanted James Pierre to turn into. Obviously didn't. The next name there is Akello Witherspoon. That's been your guy for 2 years, a guy that you think has plenty of potential. I agree. I think that, the Steelers didn't bring him in for nothing last year. I think he got a bad rep because of the injury and where he was tossed in at certain times. But do you look at him as, some people are just saying it's time to get rid of him. I think you have trade value in this guy still if you're ready to move on, because at the same time, if this is your 4th corner, if Akello Witherspoon's your 4th cornerback and you could afford him, that's as good as it gets, is to have that who matches what you're doing already with maybe a little bit more athleticism, like a 6'2" corner who's real lengthy. Do you see him? Do you foresee him being traded? Do you foresee him in a competition for a final spot with James Pierre, or you see him as, maybe we're building too much into this, looking too much into this?
Yeah, that's the thing with Akello, man. It's just never been consistent with him. He's had flashes, you've seen the highs, the way he finished the 2021 season, and then, unfortunately, all of last year, he was really banged up. He had a pretty poor first couple weeks of the season, and then, against New England, it starts getting hurt and deals with the injury, and then they bring him back and they're having him play press man without safety help over the top on AJ Brown, which is
on AJ Brown with half a hamstring.
Yeah, a baffling coaching decision in my opinion. But I definitely think Witherspoon, he's a potential starter as well. Maybe not just on the Steelers anymore. And that's the thing. Sometimes your time just runs out. But it'll really depend on the type of preseason that he has too. Say he comes out and just absolutely balls out. I do agree with you. He could work his way back into playing time. He could work his trade value up. You just never know what's going to happen. The cornerback room, adding 2 pieces like this with this much talent, it just makes the offseason and going to make training camp so much more interesting, because, the Steelers last year, it felt like we kind of already knew who was going to make the team at that position. But this year, I feel like it's a lot more wide open. And, I'm sure that these guys are really anxious to get after it too. I think it's going to make for an exciting, couple of weeks in Latrobe.
Yeah, I agree with you. The more competition, the better, especially on defense, is always my opinion. But you were right. Last year, you knew it was going to be Akello, you knew it was going to be Cam Sutton. You're just kind of oh, is Levi Wallace going to be enough to be that 3rd guy? I think
and
Levi
he didn't
had
even
a great
practice.
season.
Remember, he was
Oh
out.
yeah, he was hurt, or he was sick
year.
all of training camp. Yeah, you're very right. Yeah, so we didn't really get to see much. We were more focused on the wide receivers. This year, it'll be the corners and the inside linebackers, those things. Going with the linebackers, Nick Herbig, I think, is the other big question mark. The Steelers say he's going to play edge. Everybody and their mother on Twitter is saying he's an off-ball linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even think the conversation's there anymore of is he an off-ball linebacker? He's going to line up at the edge. It's more of, is he capable of playing off the edge? Everybody's worried about his size. He's 6'2", 240, I believe. He's got 32.5-inch arms. You think he could do it? Fellas, Have you ever wished you were a little bit taller? Maybe you matched on Tinder, but her profile says must be over 6 feet. Maybe your date wants to wear heels, but she can't because it'll make her taller than you. Well, I got the short kings covered with today's sponsors, Kanzuri. Kanzuri makes shoes that make you up to 2.8 inches taller without anyone knowing. Look, girls get heels, makeup, and push-up bras. Why can't men get a boost in confidence too? We're all the same height laying down, if you know what I mean. For a limited time only, our listeners get an extra 15% off your order with our code ALLSteelers at Kanzuri.com. The site is already 30% off, and with our code, you get an extra 15%. That's 45% off your entire order. Support our show and check them out at CONZURI.com and use our code ALLSteelers. I'm going to wait. I waited until right now to make this grand opening box reveal. Good old Kanzuri's double boxed. I think that's what I love the most about this is double boxed. Flip it over. Oh, it's got that new shoe smell. You know what I'm saying? A little drip on the outside, a little drip on the inside. I'm a fan. I'm a big fan. Not only do Kanzuri shoes make you up to 2.8 inches taller, but they're also incredibly stylish and comfortable. These are not old men Velcro shoes. You'd get compliments on your Kanzuris even if they didn't make you taller. They have styles for every occasion too. Smart, casual, sporty, you name it. The height insoles are actually built into the shoe so no one could tell you're getting a secret height boost. The brand is also hidden on the shoes and the packaging, and it's really the ultimate height hack. Life's short, but you don't have to be. It's time to level up your playing field, boys. Maybe update your dating profile to 6 feet. Kanzuri is an absolute game changer when it comes to your dating life. On top of the 30% off the site, our listeners get an extra exclusive 15% off discount at Kanzuri.com with our code ALLSteelers. That's a total of 5% on your order. Use our code ALLSteelers at Kanzuri.com. Go to CONZURI.com with our code ALLSteelers. When I want to get high, I put on a pair of Kanzuris.
Man, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with this. When I watch Herbig, dude, this dude has an absolutely electric first step. I mean, he could really get off the ball and stress tackles outside shoulders. He's a speed rusher through and through, and I really like watching his film. He has a pass rush plan. He does a good job, keeping himself clean around the edge.
Yeah.
But the lack of length does show up a little bit. And, it really shows up because, tackles, in order to get out of their stance and, get to their landmark before he beats them to the edge, they will turn their shoulders to him. And there are times where you'll see him try to start putting his like long arm into their chest to begin, pushing them back to the quarterback. But dude, he's just not powerful enough. And he just doesn't have like the length that you typically see for an edge player. And like, if you look at his mock draftable page, this dude has 31 and one quarter arm length. That is 2 percentile for edge rushers in the NFL.
That's even shorter than what they said at the combine.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's not a ton of guys like him that are getting it done in this way. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
It'll be interesting to see. I mean, there are guys that have somewhat comparable builds, like the number 1 player or the number 2 player that he's comparable to in the mock draftable database is Yannick Ngakoue. So Ngakoue is 6'2", 252. So same height. He has 10 pounds on Herbig though, and he's like got an extra inch on his arm length.
See the inches. I'm not really worried about the weight. I think that you could add and remove in the NFL a lot easier. Like especially 10 pounds. Like I know that, once you get into like that, you got to add 30 pounds. Like the DeMarvin Leal case is totally different, but 10 pounds is 10 pounds. Like the way that you're going to eat and train in the NFL, to add 10 pounds, it's not going to hurt you much. It's not going to change who you are. The arm length, you can't do it. Like the Steelers just went through this with Malik Reed. If you got no ability to push an offensive tackle back, you're relying purely on athleticism.
Well, what's interesting to me too, like when you watch Herbig is, he's not a bad run defender. Like, he can get off of blocks. It's just he's so compactly built. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
like when I watch him on film too, I would love to know. I mean, maybe someone asked him at his podium at the combine, but I would love to know what he was playing at last year, because when I watch him on film, he looks like he was playing at about 225, 230. They listed him
Dang.
at like 228, I think, and it wouldn't surprise me if he was playing like 225. So that
They
15
listed him
pounds.
at 228 in season, like
Yeah,
during this
for
at
Wisconsin.
school.
Now you never
Wow.
know. Like, I mean, schools they just
Yeah, but they
they don't
usually
care
do
about
it in the
those.
positive direction, not the net. Like they're
Yeah,
usually not like, oh, he's 240. We'll say 228. You know,
yeah.
he's usually
But
like, oh, he's 215. We'll say 230.
that's what I'm curious about, is like, if he already has added 10 pounds, like what's that going to do for his first step? Is he going to be able to keep that same level of
True.
explosiveness, that change of direction ability? One thing he does really well is because he's a speed rusher. He'll take his first like 2-3 steps up the field. Then when he plants that right foot in the ground, he'll be able to inside counter. He has a swim move, a spin move. So there's things to like about that aspect of his game too. He can win inside and out, but it's just the element of, tackles are probably never going to be scared of him, like just running through their chest, and
Yeah.
I think that's definitely something you're going to have to monitor. I'm not really sure. He could be a tweener. I do think he could play off ball. It's just like people, I think, undersell how difficult that transition is. Like,
Yeah.
college linebackers have a tough time going to the NFL and getting their eyes right for NFL type offenses. And you're asking a guy who's never played off ball to transition there. It's going to be difficult if that's what they choose to do. But I'm willing to, see the process through. With him being a 4th-round pick, they don't have a ton invested in him. I
Yeah.
think that the athleticism, the production is there for this pick to make sense. I thought it was solid value. Herbig was another guy that was in my top 100. So, I like the swing. I think it's a good pick, and I'm excited to see, how he, develops and how exactly he's deployed next year.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see what the depth at outside linebacker looks like, because there's the undrafted guy, David Perales, out of Fresno State, who had like 38 tackles for loss in 33
Mhm.
games, 23, I believe, sacks, maybe 24 and a half sacks. I think he's got an opportunity to make this team as well. And then you're sitting there with TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith as your starting outside linebackers, with Nick Herbig and possibly an undrafted free agent as your backups. Like, that's good. It's not the greatest depth. Like, I will say that I think if you added Bud Dupree, it looks a lot better. But
Sure.
to leave the offseason with 2 young guys that you believe could develop into something, who could both play special teams, Herbig is going to play, 25 snaps a game. You got to feel good about that. The last time the Steelers outside linebacker room looked this good, even with the top 3, was when Alex Highsmith was a rookie behind Bud Dupree. Since then, they've just been looking for that answer. I mean, obviously the Melvin Ingram thing, but that doesn't count in my head. You have to finish
Yeah.
a season, or at least not want to get traded by week 8, like to
Right.
count as a trio. But I agree. I think that's like, both of those guys have some upside, which excites me. Meanwhile, the inside linebacker room does not. Was that a concern for you that they did not address off-ball linebacker at all in this draft? Not even as an undrafted free agent. There is a name, Tyler Wiltz out of Pitt, who I think could be a sneaky addition to the 90-man roster after rookie minicamp. The dude came on the last game of the season, started 2 games, had like 13 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, and 2 sacks or something. He was impressive, just as somebody who covers Pitt.
Yeah.
Could be a sneaky one, but just in general, you're looking at it right now, and it's Cole Holcomb, Landon Roberts and
Mark Robinson.
Yep, and that's it. Like, that's all they're rocking with.
Yeah. I mean, I thought that if they did add somebody, it really needed to be somebody who was fluent in coverage,
Okay.
had a better coverage feel. But honestly, like, as much as I hated this past year's inside linebacker class in the draft, like, I wasn't upset about them passing up on it. I mean, there were definitely guys that I liked, Jack Campbell, but he went round 1 to
Yeah, where were
Lions,
you gonna? I
higher
think
than he
that's the
should
biggest
have
thing.
went.
Where are you gonna get one?
Yeah,
Like,
and then, like, Dorian Williams went right before they picked in the 3rd round. They ended up taking Darnell Washington anyway, so I wasn't upset about that either. So there was only a couple guys that I even really thought, made sense for them, just from a value perspective. So I'm not crazy about the inside linebacker group. I mean, is it going to be a strength for this team, or in particular this defense? No, but I don't think it's a dramatic drop off from what they had last year. And I think that there are other areas on defense where they could be even better, potentially a cornerback. So, depending on how quick they can get, a Joey Porter Jr. / maybe even Corey Trice like up to speed. I think actually like the biggest thing that I'm worried about on defense isn't, I think they've got replacement level / baseline players at inside linebacker with Holcomb and Roberts as like a thumper type.
Yeah.
I would be willing to see what Mark Robinson has, for his game too, before we, go replacing him as well. I think that the strong safeties between Neal and KZ, I think they have enough there. My biggest question mark is like, what the hell this team is doing at slot corner? That's the thing that scares me.
That's where I was going with
death.
Trice. Is like where you like is that the replacement for Arthur Millette? Is Patrick
I just
Peterson
don't
the
think so.
replacement for Arthur Millette?
It might just be a group, like a week by week game plan type of thing where they just, are in certain pieces. Just, all right, this is a matchup thing. We think he's good there this week. Next week it could be somebody different. Like they're gonna have to get creative, man. Because like when I'm looking at this roster, man, there is no like one size fit all slot option. You know what I'm saying? And that's particularly problematic.
It's
something that I'm worried
hugely
about.
problematic. That's where last year they hit a point where Cam Sutton moved into the slot, like was a slot corner, and like to the point where they were testing
anymore.
Yeah, you don't have that option. Like you were testing guys like James Pierre on the outside late in the season just to say like, yeah, whatever, man. Like we have to get Arthur Millette off the field in coverage. Like it's just got to happen. I do think that they have options. Like I think Patrick Peterson moving around is going to be as much inside corner as it is safety. I think Millette will be used as just like kind of like a blitzing corner, kind of like what Mike Hilton was. But I could see DeMonte KZ moving down. I could see that being an option for them at times. I could see them trying Corey Trice on the inside. I could see them trying Levi Wallace on the inside. I don't think that you could walk into the season and confidently say Arthur Millette is going to be your only option. He'll be your starter. Like that's who will be listed on the depth chart as the starter. But it's been 2 years where by the end of the season, you were looking for ways to get rid of him and get him off the field. And then you've done nothing about him in free. I agree with you. Like you could play with the inside linebackers that you have. You could play with the defensive line depth that you have. You could play with the safeties that you have. I mean, you cannot keep Arthur Millette out there against guys like Tyler Boyd twice a season or Rashad Bateman twice a season and just say like, okay, sounds good, guys. This is it. Have fun.
Yeah, and it really to me, I just I know I've referenced this several times over the off season, for the draft pod, for this pod, but for me, like when I just think about like why that's so important, it's that Cincinnati game, the second one.
Yeah.
He was in coverage on 38 snaps in that game, and he was targeted 9 times, gave up 6 catches, 81 yards, and a touchdown. I mean, what the Bengals were doing is they were spreading the Steelers out, but they were putting T. Higgins in the slot and getting him matched up on Millette instead of getting him matched up with like Cam Sutton or Levi Wallace on the outside. So teams are going to do that. And like really, I think that the Steelers noticed that because then you started seeing Cam Sutton play a little bit more in the slot, but they ended up getting him off the field. Like if you look at his snaps after that week, so he played 55 snaps against the Bengals. Here are his snap counts. The next, we'll say 7 games, 18, 6, 1, 17, 15, 19, 16.
That's what I'm saying.
He was not playing, and he was only asked to cover a handful of snaps. And then, everybody's aware that they brought in Chandon Sullivan.
Oh, that's the other name. Forgot about him.
And I do think that he could make the team over Millette, but I don't think both of them can make it. Just because I feel like it would probably be way too repetitive. But like even Sullivan, you talk about numbers that were really ugly last year. I mean, Sullivan's numbers were absolutely horrific. He allowed 858 yards in coverage, like 775 of those came out of the slot, which was 200 more than any other slot corner in the National Football League.
Very good.
Not great. No. So I want to dive. I've only been able to watch like one game of his from last year that I already had downloaded on my Mac. I want to try to get to like another game or two this weekend to try to like, because I want to see like the full film and get a better baseline before I'm just like ready to say like, yeah, I'm out. Like I don't see this as a significant upgrade, but the numbers aren't great. What I've seen on tape isn't really that great either. So if we're talking about a spot that concerns you right now is like the biggest weakness, like this is definitely my biggest concern on defense right now is like how they're going to attack these passing offenses that are going to put their best weapon in the slot. Do you have a guy on this roster right now that's capable of holding up in those matchups? And I really don't think they do. So if we're talking about a late training camp, preseason type of addition, whether it be like trade or like, a surprise cut from a veteran standpoint, this is where they need to be looking, is in the slot.
A slot trade during training camp would be awesome. Like that would be because like I don't even know who you're gonna go get, but it's gonna Omar Khan's gonna make it, it's
But
gonna be a good one.
here's the deal. This is like what we had been talking on the pod, right? About how they didn't have a pick between the 4th and 7th rounds. And
Yeah.
we're like, okay, well, they're just going to trade a 2024 pick, or maybe they trade a guy like Kevin Dotson, who they really don't necessarily need anymore. Well, they didn't do that during the draft. That probably just has a lot to do with, maybe there wasn't a slot corner in that range where they were like crazy about, trading capital for. But maybe there is a guy that comes out on the market, during preseason when cuts and stuff start happening, and they haven't traded any of their picks for next year.
I was going to say
they
still got a 4th and 5th round pick and Kevin Dotson. Like Kevin Dotson's still obvious trade bait for anybody. Kevin Dotson will not walk into. I mean, this is all just a prediction, but it's very hard for me to say that Kevin Dotson's going to walk into the season on the Pittsburgh Steelers roster. Like it just doesn't make any sense. I'm keeping Kendrick Green as that third guy, and
they have Nate Herbig. They really don't like,
but that's Herbig's what I'm saying. Like
that
third backup. You know what I mean? Like not even the primary backup, the guy behind that, Spencer Anderson. I'm giving him a shot. He's played all 3 positions. Like Dotson, I get it. Dotson's a starting quality guy. He's a good depth to have. He's a starter on a lot of teams in the NFL. But that's what I'm saying. He's a starter on a lot of teams in the NFL. You could trade him for somebody.
Yeah. I mean, I even think, trading him for, a day 3 pick or some type of pick swap on day 3 is fine, and I totally get, keeping him on the roster and making sure that you make it through, preseason healthy. You don't want to trade him. But if you don't want to trade him tomorrow and then, one of those starters 100%. Ends up going down. But, I think that if you can get something, of value for him, or, if you could, maybe a rare like player for player type of trade,
that's what I'm saying.
Corner.
You get,
I think you got to at least think
the
about
rare.
it.
The rare player for player trade would never be a possibility in Pittsburgh. It is 100% a possibility in Pittsburgh with Omar Khan riding the ship. Like that's just, I could see it happening. Plus you just said, like you have other draft picks from next year. maybe you utilize them. Like, I just think that that's a name to watch as, if you're trying to fill that position and you're thinking, oh, okay, late signings, blah, blah, blah. But you're like, nah, let's make a little bit of a splash. They still have the pieces to make splash. Like that's the craziest part about what the Steelers did. All right, let's switch it to the offensive side of the ball. They did not address wide receiver. I do want to talk about that. But first, you wrote yesterday on All Steelers that the biggest winner of the draft for the Steelers, veteran-wise, was Naji Harris. I tend to agree with you. You add Broderick Jones, who's a franchise left tackle, and Darnell Wright, was asked during the combine, and I didn't know this until draft night, by some teams if he would play tackle in the NFL. So he's essentially a 6 tackle who's 6'7" and could catch some footballs. Najee's, in my opinion, agreed, the clear winner of this draft class. And then you got guys, I'm not going to name names, but some Pittsburgh radio host tossing out there that his bold prediction is Najee's going to get benched by Halloween weekend. I look at it as the other way. I think this is the first time we actually get to see what Naji Harris is capable of doing in the NFL. And I think that's, I think everything that we hoped for Naji Harris in year 1 is still there. He dealt with injuries and also had an offensive line that was better, no doubt, but it's so hard to trust an offensive line after the year that you went through the year before. Now he's got a real offensive line in front of him, a real blocking tight end in front of him, possibly a fullback in Monty the Mullet Pottenbaum, who is my favorite undrafted free agent of all time. I mean, he is, I agree, clear winner of this draft.
Yeah, I mean, I just think, Broderick Jones, getting Darnell Washington, like, Jones is, I think, more of a ready-made run blocker than he is a pass protector entering his rookie season. And then, when I look at Darnell Washington, man, he's just this force multiplier in the run game. Like whatever you need him to do, combos, get to second level, he can get out in the perimeter. He's just nasty, man, with a very, very unique frame and build. for that position. And I think that the Steelers are really trying to go all in on this identity on offense. You saw how much they leaned on the run game down the stretch last season. They
Yep.
won a bunch of football games, trying to make life easy on Kenny Pickett, but put the ball in 22's hands. And, they've gotten better up front. Isaac Seumalo, Broderick Jones, Darnell Washington. If those three guys are on the left side of the line, come week one, this is going to be a run heavy football team. And this will be the best supporting cast that Najee's played with at the NFL level. And say what you want, we can talk all day about, spending first round picks on running backs, this and that. But if Najee can't do big things next year, and when I say like big things, I'm talking like 1,400 yards rushing.
Yeah.
If he can't do that next year with this group, I'm not sure that it's ever going to happen. It's probably not going to happen in Pittsburgh. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Entering year 3, he's already, 26 years old. So if it doesn't happen now, like it's now or never. And I think that it could legitimately happen. And I'm excited to see how it plays out because, I do think that, you look at what he did the second half of last season, just getting healthy. I think he averaged like 4.3 yards per carry. I think after the bye week where, his foot was finally healed, you saw him be more decisive. You saw him be a little more elusive than he was over the first like month or two of the season. So I'm hoping for good things for Najee. I think, if he takes that leap and, he's really good, then this offense is going to be a lot more dynamic.
Yeah, I agree. And you look at a guy, you look at a guy who the last 2 seasons behind the worst offensive line in football by 1.5 miles, and then maybe a bottom 15, depending on how you ranked him, offensive line last season, he still put up 1,200 and 1,000 yards. Like he still had quote unquote successful running back seasons. So I think you give him, like, my outlook on this is just like you said, it is very possible that he is a 14, 15 yard runner, 100-yard runner this season, because he's just shown that he's capable of pounding through stuff with an awful offense. Maybe with some type of offense, he's got a little bit of something. And he, if he could stay healthy, because the injuries were huge and I think so undervalued last year of what was holding him back. I agree. I think he is the dude. On top of that, like, I expect Kenny Pickett to have a better season in 2023. I expect Matt Canada to have more weapons to do nothing with.
I like how you pivoted there.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. Like, I have no expectations for Matt Canada. Sure. I think that's the biggest question. Like you just said, if he can't do it, I don't know who will. Really, the question is, like, what is the bar for Matt Canada? What does Matt Canada have to do at all for you to be like, oh, okay, well, he did something? Like,
this offense has to be like, it has to be top 15. It has to be in the top half of the league. If it's not, then he's not going to make it to see another year. I mean, even with the Steelers, having the world's longest leash on assistant coaches, I mean, it's just it's now or never type deal for him as well. So, do
you expect that? Do you think that's even a slight possibility? That
only because I see the talent that this offense has. Like, I've talked a lot about the weaponry. I think the weaponry's solid. When your 1 through 4 receiving options are Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, Pat Freiermuth, and Allen Robinson, that's good enough, man. Like,
dude, Darnell Washington, Calvin Austin, and Connor Hayward coming off the bench, like, you feel pretty all right.
Yeah, you don't like. There's no excuse. They've spent money to upgrade the offensive line. They brought in Isaac Seumalo. They drafted Broderick Jones, traded up for Broderick Jones. Even if I do anticipate a learning curve for Jones, they have to do it next year. And, like, this is the thing too. Like, with a quarterback that you're hoping is going to take a second year leap. We got to see it, man. Like, there's no more excuses. It's got to happen. In my opinion, it's now or never for Matt Canada. And I'm not going to get my hopes up, but like I said, I do see the talent that's there on offense. So I won't be completely surprised if they are, competent. That's what I'm hoping for, is competent.
Well, if they are competent, do you think that, I mean, I know this is a year out, but you think the landscape, I don't even want to talk about, do you think he stays? Like, do you think the outlook of Matt Canada changes? Like, do you think you think this is a year where possibly everything clicks and we just like, oh man, everybody's so happy and forgiving?
Like I said, I have no expectations for him. I'm just laying out what I see from a talent perspective, man. I'm trying to be cautiously optimistic. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, Kasha, I agree. I think my biggest thing is I have such a hard time thinking that if this dude could lead this team to a Super Bowl, and I still think fans, myself included to a degree, would
Sure.
be on the critical side of things. Or maybe we just wipe the slate clean, and this is very high hopes. But like you said, we're gonna stay cautiously optimistic until we need to not be cautiously optimistic, which I think is cool because you think about a year ago, we were trying to tell people like, hey man, it's gonna be rough. Okay. Like just hold on. We're gonna get through it. Everything's gonna be okay. Now we're like, yeah, you never know what's gonna happen. Things could be all right, which is it feels pretty good. All right, last question that I got for you here. They didn't address the offensive line, but you just are the wide receiver group, excuse me. But you just said that you feel good about the weaponry.
Yep.
Where everybody and their mother had the Steelers mocked taking a wide receiver, yourself included. Did it bother you at all that they did not, or did you look at it and just be like, yeah, well, they have when Allen Robinson's your third and Calvin Austin's your fourth, you feel pretty all right.
Yeah, in my last mock, I didn't have them taking a receiver. That was after the Robinson deal, and
Yeah.
really, it really was the Robinson deal that I thought swayed me off that opinion that they would address it. Just because, when I was headed in to watch the film on A-Rob, I was a little nervous because I honestly just assumed that he was washed just based on what I saw live last year from him.
Yeah.
But when I looked at the film, man, I saw a player that can still be productive. He could still be press coverage. He still wins above the rim. He can create quick separation in the red zone, and help them in that area too. So when you look at a number 3 receiver who's played inside outside, he's quarterback friendly, knows how to find the open zones, in zone coverage. I think that all those things are good things to give your young quarterback. And like I said, if he's the number 4 option, the Steelers are in a good spot, in my opinion. So that's why I'm not surprised that they didn't draft one.
Yeah, I agree. I look at it and just say like Pat Fryermuth's able to do so much more now. Connor Hayward's able to do so much more. You have weapons that you didn't have necessarily as big of a use for last year because you couldn't utilize them as in different areas the way that you can now. Darnell Washington to me was like the wide receiver pick. Like that was here's a skill guy.
That's what I'm interested to see what happens with Washington, man. Because they can go 12 personnel and throw out of it, and I think you'll see that more this season. But when you go 12 personnel, if the Steelers are a good running team, which I hope that they are, if they're a good running team, defenses are going to have to match that with base personnel. But just because you're in 12 personnel doesn't necessarily mean you have to have 2 inline tight ends. They can come out, put Washington inline, put Pat Fryermuth in the slot, and if an opposing team is in base, they got to roll a linebacker or they got to roll a safety down to cover Pat.
And that's never going to happen.
And Pat's going to eat those guys up. So that's what I'm saying. Like the Washington pick for me is more about allowing Fryermuth to do the things that he's best at, get out there and catch passes out the slot, out in space, and be that guy underneath and in the intermediate areas of the field. So I'm excited, man. Like I said, I don't want to hear any excuses about the playmakers next year. Like don't give it to me. I'm not accepting any excuses about weaponry. It needs to happen. It needs to happen.
That's what it is. It's where the Pittsburgh Steelers are. It took them 2 years of really, really rough football to get to a spot where you're just like, okay, the holes are filled. There's minimal holes. Every NFL team's going to have a hole. Minimal holes on this team right now. If everybody stays healthy, if everything clicks, you got to feel real good about where the Pittsburgh Steelers are in 2023. I feel real good about it as well. With that, we're heading out of here. Thank you guys so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk, and check us out anywhere you get your podcasts. Find all of mine and Derek's work at allsteelers.com and enjoy a beautiful weekend here in the Berg. I'll be back on Monday with Steven. Peace.